Hi Rosie, thanks so much for joining us on Britain's Birth Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and can you tell us where you're based and who's in your family?
Yeah, I'm currently based in Nottingham, and I live with my husband and our daughter, who's 18 months old.
Wow, okay, that's amazing. And what's your profession apart from taking care of your family?
I've recently trained to be a doula, so I've kind of changed my career to become a doula, so that's where I am now.
Wow, okay. I'm sure we'll get into that later, definitely. Okay, let's get straight into it. So, in terms of your pregnancy, was this something that you had planned and thought of?
Yeah, I think we thought about it or we discussed it, but I think we kind of don't expect it to happen right away, because essentially that's what happened. I was doing a biopsy on some abnormal testing following a sweep, and sorry, not a sweep. What's it called? The
Pap smear?
Yeah, the smear, exactly. Yeah, so I had some abnormal tests following a smear, so I had to actually remove the copper coil that I had that I was using as protection at the moment. So we knew that we weren't protected, but we didn't really think that I was going to get pregnant straight away. It was within a week of the coil removal.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it happened pretty much straight away. So it was planned, but it was still unexpected.
Yeah. And how did you feel when you found out you were pregnant?
I felt happy because for some odd reason, for many, many years, I had this worry that maybe it might not happen. I'm not sure if other people share this worry, but it was just something that I thought maybe I can't have children. So it was a little bit of a relief that I was pregnant, and then we were happy for what was to come.
Yeah, amazing. All right. And what were your thoughts on birth at this point?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What were your thoughts on birth at this point?
Oh, at this point, I was really not informed about birth at all. I had no experience of it, and now in hindsight, I kind of realised that it's probably due to the fact that birth is not really a huge part of our society. So I had no experience with birth, and most of my friends who had given birth hadn't really had much of an interest in knowing what their birth was like. I've always liked children, and I've always liked babies, but I've never really been interested in birth. So I had absolutely no knowledge, no experience. So I had no expectations either, which is not something I was thinking about at that stage.
Right. And how was your pregnancy for you?
The pregnancy was kind of uneventful in the sense that nothing unusual happened. It was fairly kind of a typical pregnancy. However, when you're in it, you obviously feel everything and experience everything as you go along. Every little hiccup and every little thing that aches and when you're uncomfortable and all of those things. So when I was in it, I was feeling quite. I was going with it. So each stage brought its own kind of difficulties as well as surprises and positive experiences. So I was just trying to go with it and remain calm and so on.
Yeah, amazing. And did you know where and how you'd like to birth maybe?
As I got closer to kind of second trimester, I was looking more into the birth alternatives and started thinking about planning the birth as well, because I realised that I needed lots of information and I needed to attain that knowledge in order to make informed decisions. So I was reading quite a lot, and at that point, I really liked the idea of having a water birth. So we were kind of in the middle of moving houses, so a home birth wasn't really in question, because we would have been in an empty house by the time the baby would have arrived. But a water birth was something that we were thinking about and talking about at that stage, at the hospital, in the sanctuary department.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. And let's go straight in. So, can you recall how did labour begin for you, and how did it progress?
So my waters actually broke on my due date.
Wow.
Which was funny. Yeah, because it doesn't always happen for first-time mothers. We're usually told that we're going to be late. So it broke on the due date, and then labours didn't start. So I was asked to kind of keep monitoring the situation in case there's any infection or anything like that, because that was what they were worried about, any risk to the baby. And after about 24 hours, nothing had happened still, so then they asked me to come into the hospital, where we were talking about alternatives such as induction and drip, and also emergency C-sections. So they took me down the whole road of alternatives. So what I did was I asked for more time, because I felt like the birth that I had planned was intervention-free. I wanted to avoid an induction at all costs. I wanted to avoid anything that was not in my plan. But I also realised that I didn't want to put my baby at risk for anything. So we went for a walk at the park opposite the hospital, which is a really, really lovely park, and got a chance to get some fresh air and really think about what we were going to do. And at that time as well, I was doing lunges, and I was walking up and down the stairs, just trying to get things going on my own, which I had also done the night before with eating spicy food and jumping on a training ball and everything like that. So after about 6 hours, nothing had happened still, so we went back to them and I accepted an induction.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked. It sent me out for another walk, and at this point in labour, I was pretty stressed out, because I was thinking this induction is not going to work, and I'm going to have to be on a drip, and everything's going to be really painful. I'm going to end up having a C-section. So I was pretty stressed out at this point, and the hospital is situated like in the middle of the city, so there's lots of traffic, and it was just not the kind of calm birth that I'd imagined. And out of nowhere, we found this little sanctuary in the park that had like a little waterfall, and you couldn't hear the traffic anymore. So I sat there and I was doing my hypnobirthing exercises, and really was able to take a moment to connect myself in order to refocus and get to a good mind state. And then that's when things started happening. I was starting feeling like small surges, and then returned to the hospital, and I started labouring. So this was about in the evening. At this point, I'd been in the hospital for about 12 hours, and I ended up asking for a pool room, even though I wasn't able to go into sanctuary, because I'd already had that risk of infection. So they wanted me on the labour ward, which is more a midwife as well as doctors involved in care for births that are not as straightforward. So I ended up getting a water room anyways. I had all the lovely midwives that were really happy to listen to what I needed to say and what I wanted and my wishes, in order to kind of help me with what I wanted. So I ended up in a pool room and got to labour in water, which I really, really happy about, because that's essentially what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then about, 8 hours later, or 7 hours later, she was born. And I stepped out of the pool when she was just about to come out. So I actually had her on the bed.
Oh, wow.
In the end, yeah.
Was that something that you felt you needed to do?
Sorry, say that again?
Was that something you felt you needed to do in that moment?
No, not necessarily. I think it was the fact that I was just exhausted because I've been up for so many hours, and also I've spent so much of my energy trying to get into labour naturally. I really didn't think about preserving my energy, and I didn't feel like eating at this point. So I was just drinking water, and labouring in water felt kind of like almost like a workout, because you obviously have to keep yourself floating a little bit. So it was just out of pure exhaustion that I got out of the pool, because I didn't feel like I had much more energy in me to push her out. And I was saying to the midwife as well, I don't know how many pushes I've got left in me. But yeah, in the end she came out.
Oh, amazing. And how were the first few hours with her?
So straight after I had her, I actually had a hemorrhaged. Right. So they rushed me into theatre pretty much straight away. I had about half an hour with her while they were prepping, and they were trying to work out how much blood I'd lost. And I think the nurse said that I'd lost 2.5 litres of blood.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I had quite a calm and relaxing environment in my birth, where it was dim lit, and I had like ocean sounds in the background, and it was really, really lovely. And then because of everything, the lights were turned on, and there were like 10 people in scrubs entering the room. And I was desperate to get the breastfeeding going, but she wouldn't latch on that early. She was staring at me with her big eyes. And my husband was cutting the cord, and he was supposed to announce the gender as well. So everything kind of happened at the same time. And this was around the same time where I got a shot as well to get the placenta out in order to prepare me for surgery. And in the end, I got about half an hour with her before they rushed me to theatre. So they left baby with my husband and my sister-in-law, who were left in the room with a big pile of blood on the floor.
Oh my goodness.
So they were a bit terrified, but I was rushed into theatre, and I was kind of in kind of a bliss because I had that natural oxytocin flowing.
Yeah.
And I was lying there, and it felt really strange because it felt like I'd met my daughter, but because it was only about half an hour, I felt like I hadn't really met her properly, and I was a bit stressed out in the theatre as well, because the doctors in there were a bit, they had a miscommunication, and they were arguing almost in the theatre, so I was getting really stressed out. And I remember telling one of the nurses in there that I was feeling really stressed. I felt like they were going to paralyze me because I was having an epidural after the birth.
Yeah.
To numb me waist down. And she was saying that she was trying to calm me down, but also asking me to sit still whilst this other nurse was shaking me, trying to hug me. And I was like panicking, because I was like, oh my God, these people are going to paralyze me.
Yeah.
But once the epidural kicked in, I felt really calm, and I was lying on the table, feeling really happy and chatty. I was talking to everybody in there and asking them what they do and, you know, what their names were and things like that. And then about after an hour and a half, I went to recovery, where my husband wheeled in our daughter again, so I got to meet her for the first time, a second time.
Yeah.
Which was really, really lovely. It was a surreal feeling, just holding her and just being with her whilst she was just looking at me, and wanted to get the breastfeeding started as well. So I asked for that support, and somebody came over and helped me out and supported me with that as well.
Oh.
So that was really, the first few hours were a bit hectic, but in the end it kind of felt amazing as well.
Yeah, right. And how was your feeding journey?
It's been okay. I'm still breastfeeding at 18 months.
Wow.
And in the beginning, it was also one of those things that I was thinking maybe I won't be able to breastfeed, which I know that a lot of people do think. However, I mean, statistically, most people should be able to breastfeed. So I guess it's something that we are told that there's a self-doubt that we have within us, that's a reflection of kind of what's going on in society in terms of supporting new parenthood. But I felt that it was pretty much straightforward. I mean, the first few days are a bit can be quite difficult, anyways. You know, especially when the milk comes in and it's starting to have a little bit of pain and things like that. You're engorged, and if the latch is not right, then it hurts in the beginning. But it took a few days to kind of get a handle of it, and then since then it's been okay. With a few occasions of mastitis here and there, a few months in. But other than that, the breastfeeding journey has been quite positive for me.
Oh, that's great to hear. And
Yeah.
how was life postnatally for you personally?
So I had quite a lot of family support. My mother and my sisters came to visit from Sweden, and they stayed for a month. And my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law live here in Nottingham as well, so they came around. So I had lots of people in the house helping out, and it was just running so smoothly, and I was able to just rest and focus on bonding with my baby, and they were making sure that, you know, we had nutritious meals, and I got to sleep and rest, and that they were helping with bathing the baby, they were helping with cleaning the house, and everything was just running so smoothly, and I couldn't have gotten through it without that support. And obviously, internally and on a personal note, it's a huge transformation to go into motherhood. So you have those moments of ups and downs. There's a huge transformation that allows you to be more confident, that allows you to listen to your instincts, that allows you to develop internally and become the best version of yourself for the sake of your baby. But then you also have the moments when you're doubting yourself and you're worrying, when you're very low in mood, and when you're feeling like everything has changed and you're forever going to be dictated by this little being that tells you when you get to sleep, when you get to eat, when you get to move, when you get to do everything that you need to do, basically controlling your life. So there's been kind of the balance between them two. But having that support was just crucial for me to get by, being able to talk to my husband about it, reaching out to my friends who'd done this once or twice before, or who also a few new mothers who were doing it at the same time. So they were really, really amazing in that, being able to talk to other women, other mothers, other parents about it.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you covered many bases in terms of support, and that's great. That's great to hear. And now we're going to make a shift from personal into professional. How and why did you decide to become a doula?
Well, I think with that transformation that happened, you kind of reevaluate your priorities in life, and you also become kind of a new version of yourself. So that summer, I kind of went through. So this was straight after, a couple of months after birth. I kind of went through long periods of self-reflection. I wanted to go forward with my life with, and I ended up reading this diary of a doula, and I just felt a calling. I just felt like this is what I want to do. I want to just help other people have positive experiences when they go on to almost the biggest journey in their lives, towards becoming parents. And I knew of so many people who've had such difficult experiences both in pregnancy and and birth, and that affects the way that you go on with your life. That affects the way that you parent. That affects the way that you relate to yourself going forward. So I just felt like I needed to. Sorry.
No worries.
I just felt like I needed to do my part to. One second. Sorry, just give me 1 minute.
No worries. Yeah, sorry. I just felt like I needed to help other people and support them in their journey. Yeah.
So I decided to become a doula. I had some experience since previously with mindfulness, with trauma, with compassion-focused therapy. So that's kind of where my background is. So I felt like I would be doing kind of similar things, but with a new clientele. And also, the idea of working for myself was quite interesting, because it also fitted in with my kind of life that's ahead, in terms of being at home, being around children, and wanting to have that kind of life where I decided how my working hours were going to look like, and I didn't need to kind of take in consideration of an organization or a boss or anything like that. So I could work for myself and dictate my own hours and fit that into my life as a mother.
Yeah, definitely. And is the area that you're in quite accepting of doulas?
It's not. So Nottingham is kind of. I think you're still getting used to the ideas of doulas. It's not as popular here as it is, for example, in London.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that's growing on people here, but it's still not as popular as I would like it to be.
Yeah. And how is being a doula in the current climate for you?
Well, I trained during the lockdown, so I kind of don't have anything to compare it to at the moment. But I've spoken to some local doulas, and they've told me that it's kind of slowed down and so on. So to start out in this climate, it has been quite difficult because of the current policies of restricted visitors and visiting hours and birth partners and things like that. So it becomes very difficult for me to inspire people to use a doula when the hospitals are saying you can't even have your own husband or partner in the room with you when you birth, let alone another person who's your doula. So it's kind of created a really difficult situation for birthing people, and it's created a difficult situation for birth workers as well. And also, because of the situation, obviously difficult to get new clients at the moment.
Of course. Right. In terms of being a doula, do you think that's had any effect on how you parent?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a strong believer in how birth affects us all of our lives. So the way that we enter this world has an effect on how, subconsciously who we are as people as we grow up. And all of those stages are important. So at the stage where I am at now with a toddler is just as important as when they are born or when they're a bit older. So everything adds to that experience, which together create an adult who is emotionally intelligent, who is self-confident, who is kind and compassionate, all of those things. So that kind of, all of that begins with birth. So for me to kind of feel that reassurance that I'm continuously doing things for my child that will affect them long term, in terms of, for example, how I deal with her expressing her emotions, or how I deal with discipline. All of those things just need to be informed. So I think they all go together. So a lot of what I do, a lot of what I learn about being a doula inspires me to be a better parent for my child.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, it's been very interesting to hear about how your own experience has then pushed you to make a professional change for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your truth.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really amazing to get an opportunity and platform to talk about my experiences.